I really don't know how to start explaining what happened, but I think I'll try to tell everything, because to this day I can't understand. My boyfriend and I had decided to spend a month in a new city, so we rented an apartment through Airbnb. The place looked perfect in the photos, an old, charming construction with a cozy touch. The host, a polite and super helpful man, was very clear with us right away. He explained that one of the rooms was locked because he used the space as a deposit and asked us not to try to open it. We didn't think much about it at the time. It seemed like a simple and honest explanation. In the first nights, everything was quiet. The apartment had a kind of old atmosphere, but charming, and we spent time exploring the city. However, one night, while we were in the living room, we began to hear noises coming from the locked room. It was a weak sound, but repetitive, as if something was being moved inside. Initially, I tried to ignore it, but the feeling that something was not right did not leave my head. I didn't say anything to my boyfriend because I didn't want to scare him, but deep down, I felt like I was starting to get restless. I thought it could be the wind, but I don't know, something wasn't right. Then on a specific night, we returned to the apartment after a walk around the city. It was already dark, and everything seemed normal at first glance. However, when we entered, something caught my attention. The lock of the locked room was different. I swear it was the same padlock we had seen when we arrived, but now it looked new. Stronger, more imposing. I looked at my boyfriend, and he noticed the same thing. The padlock was closed, but the key was still in the door, which didn't make sense. And the worst, the feeling that someone or something was inside hit us like a punch in the stomach. I tried to rationalize the situation. Maybe the host had changed the padlock to ensure our safety, but that didn't explain the noises we started to hear. We tried to ignore it, but we couldn't. The atmosphere inside the apartment was heavy. I felt as if someone's eyes were watching us, but there was no one there. The night got tense, and I started having trouble sleeping. When my boyfriend finally fell asleep, I stayed awake, listening to the sound of something scraping on the wall. Or maybe it was the floor, coming from inside that locked room. That lasted for hours. The next morning, we tried to talk to the host about the padlock, but he seemed so calm and indifferent when we mentioned that something was wrong. He just explained that the room was in the process of being organized, and that the key could have been changed by mistake, which to me seemed like a ragged excuse. However, even with the explanation, I couldn't get the noises of that night out of my head. We decided to go out to try to clear our minds, and take a break to see if things would go back to normal. But when we came back in the late afternoon, something even stranger was waiting for us. The door to the locked room was slightly open. Not so much to give us a view of the interior, but enough to feel the tension in the air. When we opened the door, there was no one there, but the smell of something strange invaded the room. It was as if something was burned, or maybe it could just be the memories of that smell that we couldn't identify. We didn't touch anything, but I couldn't help but feel like we were being watched. My boyfriend was visibly uncomfortable, but tried to look away and insist that we were just tired of the trip. But I knew it wasn't just that. In the following days, the weather in the house seemed even stranger. The noises in the locked room began to get more frequent, and sometimes it seemed that the sound came from inside the wall, as if someone was walking there. We tried to ignore it, but it was impossible. I even started to lose sleep, and my boyfriend, who was always more rational, was visibly more tense. One night, while he was in the shower, I heard a noise of something being dragged inside the room. My heart raced. I looked at the door, and the sound stopped abruptly. I was frozen for a long time, until finally the noise happened again, but softer, as if someone was trying not to. Afraid that something was really happening there, I decided to take a look on my own. When I entered the room, the strange smell was even stronger, as if it had impregnated the environment. The light that was off before was now on, but there was no sign that anyone was there. The most disturbing thing was that I found a small box, hidden under the bed. I didn't know if I should open it, but I couldn't resist. Inside, there were some papers, a pair of glasses, and old photos. The photos seemed to have been taken right there, in the house. But the most bizarre of all was a photo in which my boyfriend and I appeared, but we didn't take that photo. It was as if someone was watching us. My stomach turned at the time. How did that photo exist? Who took it off? My first instinct was to call my boyfriend, but before I could move, I heard the unmistakable sound of the bedroom door closing itself behind me. I came around at the same moment, and fear took over my body. The latch turned slightly, as if someone was holding the doorknob on the other side. I wanted to scream, but my throat seemed stuck. My heart was beating so hard that it hurt in my chest. With trembling hands, I dropped the box on the floor and ran to the door, turning the handle with all my strength. Luckily for me, she opened it right away, and I ran straight to the living room, almost tripping over the furniture. My boyfriend left the bathroom confused when he saw me pale and out of breath. I pointed to the room, trying to explain what had happened, but the words didn't come out right. He took his cell phone and went straight there, determined to see everything with his own eyes. When we entered together, everything looked exactly as before. The light was off, the strange smell continued, but the box was no longer there. My boyfriend looked at me as if I was going crazy, and I didn't know what to say. I was sure of what I saw, the photos, our image recorded there. But now there was nothing to prove it. That night, we slept with all the lights on, but sleep didn't come easily. I turned over in bed, listening to every little sound in the apartment. Around 3 in the morning, a noise made me sit on the bed in a jump, the sound of a spinning latch. My boyfriend woke up scared and asked what it was, but at that moment, the silence had already taken over the apartment again. I stood there, paralyzed, waiting for any other sign of movement. Nothing happened. The next morning, we decided to leave as soon as possible. We canceled the rest of the stay, made up an excuse for the host, and left without looking back. The strangest? When we were packing, my boyfriend went to the kitchen and called my name, pale. On the table next to the coffee maker, there was a single printed photo. A photo of us, sleeping in bed, taken from inside the locked room. We never found out who or what was there, but one thing is certain: someone was watching us. And you, have you ever been through something inexplicable like this? Tell me in the comments. I want to know your story. I always stay on Airbnb when I travel for work, so I didn't think twice before renting a well-rated and apparently perfect apartment for my 1-week stay. The place was modern, clean, and quiet, ideal for the kind of remote work I needed to do. The host looked professional, sent detailed check-in instructions, and even recommended some cafes and restaurants nearby. Everything was normal until the second night, when my cell phone had a low battery, and I looked for an outlet near the bed to charge. As soon as I connected the charger, I noticed something strange. The inside of the outlet reflected a minimal light, as if there was something metallic in there. At the time, I thought it was something in my head, maybe just any glow of the internal structure of the socket. But curiosity bothered me. I took the flashlight of my cell phone and lit up the place well. That's when my stomach sank. Inside the socket, there was a micro camera pointed directly at the bed. My heart raced, and for a moment I froze, trying to assimilate that. Was it real? Was I really being filmed? A mixture of panic and disgust took over me. Who put that there? The host? Someone else? And the worst, how long had this camera been there recording everything? My first reaction was to cover the camera with a piece of tape I found in my suitcase, but that didn't make me feel safer. My brain worked fast, trying to decide what to do. I immediately called the host, but the call went straight to voicemail. I tried to send a message through the Airbnb chat, but it just blocked me. My heart was beating so hard that it felt like it was going to come out of my throat. I tried to convince myself that maybe he had nothing to do with that it could be a mistake, but the truth is that I had no idea who could be on the other side watching everything. I left the apartment in a hurry, without even bothering to get all my things. I needed to get out of there. As soon as I got to a nearby cafe, I sat in a corner and started researching how to report that. I contacted Airbnb support, and after distressing minutes explaining the situation, they told me they would investigate the case, but the answer was too vague to reassure me. Meanwhile, I could only think of how many other cameras could be hidden in that apartment. What if there were any in the bathroom? In the shower? I felt violated, as if my privacy had been torn from me without me noticing. I decided I couldn't just wait for an answer from Airbnb. I called the police and reported everything. They instructed me to return to the apartment accompanied by a car. Just thinking about stepping there again, a chill ran down my spine, but I needed proof. When the police arrived, we went in together. The environment looked the same, but now I knew that place had something unhealthy. I showed the camera inside the outlet, and one of the police officers disassembled the piece carefully. It didn't take long for them to find another camera, hidden in a fake smoke detector on the ceiling. My stomach turned. While the police cataloged the evidence, one of them tried to locate the host, but as expected, he did not answer. The apartment was registered under a short-term rental company, making it difficult to track down a real name. Even worse, there were no security cameras in the building to see who came in or out. I felt helpless. In the end, the police took the devices for investigation, but I was told that many times such cases simply got lost due to lack of concrete information. I couldn't believe that was happening to me. I tried to find another place to stay, but the idea of staying alone again made me paranoid. I spent the night in a hotel, checking every corner of the room before I could relax a little. The next day, I received an automatic email from Airbnb stating that my reservation had been canceled and the apartment ad removed. No explanation, no attempt at direct contact. It was as if they wanted to erase any trace of that. I called support again, but they only said that they were analyzing the case and that I would receive a refund. That's all. No mention of the host, no guarantee that he would be prevented from renting another place. I became obsessed with the case in the following days. I researched the name of the apartment and found out that other people had already reported strange experiences in the same host's lodgings, but the ads always disappeared before something was done. Some victims claimed to have found hidden cameras, others spoke of unauthorized access to the apartment during the stay, but nothing was ever proven enough for a legal action. The feeling of impotence was unbearable. The worst thing was knowing that he would probably continue to do this with other people, changing accounts and location to avoid suspicions. After a few days trying to move on, I started to wonder if I was really safe. My phone started receiving calls from unknown numbers that hung up as soon as I answered. Sometimes, I felt like someone was watching me when I left the hotel to work. Maybe it was paranoia, but the discomfort was real. The idea that that man knew who I was, that he had my name, my documents, and even videos of me made me completely vulnerable. I had already changed all my passwords and even changed my number, but the feeling of being watched did not pass. Until one night, while I was at the hotel, I received a strange notification on my cell phone. An attempt to log into my Airbnb account coming from an unknown device. My heart raced. Someone was trying to access my profile. Was it him? I stared at the screen for a while, until another notification appeared, an email from the platform saying that my account had been temporarily blocked for suspicious activity. I no longer had any doubts. Someone was trying to delete me digitally, in the same way he erased the traces of his hosting. At this point, I no longer had any doubts that it was not just a common scam, it was something much more sinister. I spent the night awake, trying to recover my account, and checking all my networks to make sure nothing else had been compromised. The next day, I contacted the police and Airbnb support, but all I got were protocol answers. Without concrete evidence, they could do little but register my complaint. When I tried to access the apartment ad again, I found that it had been removed. The host had disappeared from the platform as if it had never existed. I never heard about the case again, and to this day, I don't know if he managed to use those recordings for anything. What scares me the most is thinking about how many other women may have gone through the same thing without ever realizing it. Since then, I always check sockets, mirrors, and any suspicious corner when I stay in a new place. But what about you? Have you ever stopped to think about what may be hidden in the place where you are sleeping now? I never imagined that a weekend of fun with friends would end the way it ended. The idea was simple: rent a remote house to relax, have some meals together, and forget a little about the stress of the routine. We found the perfect house on Airbnb. She was in an isolated location, surrounded by nature, and seemed to be the ideal place to disconnect. The host was super attentive, sent us all the necessary information, and assured us that it would be a quiet stay. We received the code to open the door, and, when we arrived, what we found didn't look at all like what we had imagined. The door opened easily, but when we entered, we soon realized that something was wrong. It wasn't what we expected. There were clothes scattered around the room, personal objects, even still damp towels on top of the furniture. The place wasn't empty as it should be. It looked like someone was living there, but at the same time, everything was a little out of place, as if the person had left suddenly. We were silent for a moment, exchanging confused glances, not knowing what to do. What bothered us the most, however, was the smell. It wasn't exactly dirty, but there was a strange smell in the air, something like mold mixed with cheap perfume. That's when the front door opened again. Suddenly, a man appeared at the front door, almost jumping into the house. He was visibly angry, and his expression was that of someone who was in shock. He looked at us for a few seconds before shouting, "What are you doing here? I've never put this house for rent, get out now." We were paralyzed, not understanding what was happening. None of us knew what to answer. The guy seemed completely out of his mind. We tried to explain that we had rented the house through Airbnb and that we had the code for the door, but he simply ignored all this, pushing us out. We, not knowing what to do, tried to call Airbnb, but things only got weirder. When we finally got in touch, the answer we received was even more surreal. The host profile had disappeared from the platform. There were no records of any rent, nor of the payment we made in advance. The feeling of being ignored and discredited was huge. How could something so simple become so confusing and scary? We stayed there on the sidewalk, not knowing what to do. No explanation made sense, and the worst thing was that the man was still there, staring at us from the door, without giving any more details. In a matter of minutes, he disappeared into the house, and the door was closed tightly. The situation was getting more and more tense. The tension only increased while we were there, not knowing whether we should call the police or try to solve it in some other way. We stood on the sidewalk, looking at each other, not knowing what to do. We couldn't just leave, since we had paid in advance, and the house was theoretically ours until the end of the weekend. But we also couldn't ignore what was happening. The man stayed inside, behind the door, and didn't leave anymore. When we tried to take one last look through the window, everything was quiet, but something seemed wrong. There were no signs of life in the house, no light, nothing that told us what was really happening. It was as if that place was keeping some secret, and we were the intruders there. We then decided to take a step back and try to contact the platform once again, but the phone wouldn't connect. The situation was completely out of control. We were afraid that the man really had nothing to do with the rent, and that something much more sinister was happening there. The fact that the host's profile had only disappeared made everything more suspicious. After a long wait, we ended up deciding to leave, but we still didn't understand why the house was occupied by this man, or why Airbnb simply deleted all the data related to our reservation. I still wonder to this day what happened there. Who was that man? And why was he so aggressive? Something tells me that this was not the first time he did that, but we never got to know the truth. The experience was so disturbing that I could no longer trust short-term rentals as before. And you, have you ever been through something similar? Have you ever lived in a situation that left you afraid and without explanation? Tell me in the comments. I want to know what you think about what happened here.